Hello guys, welcome back to another tutorial. For those who are new here, my name is Dream1041 and today I'm going to be showing you 5 easy steps on how to clean your backdrop in Photoshop 2023, and I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to transform this image to this image. Alright, so let's dive right into it. So first things first, you're going to press Command J or Control J to duplicate a layer. In this layer we're gonna rename it and call it clean up. Nice. So what we are doing here, we are just cleaning up the sections or the areas that don't look nice. For example, let me select the brush so that I can show you what we are doing. So we have this, wait, using a mouse. All my photos are edited using a mouse. So we have this, this. There's a lot to clean up. So you're gonna now go to the next option, which is taking the spot brush and adjusting the size accordingly to depending on what you're selecting. So you're gonna just clean up so easily. As you can see, so easy, so smooth. No hurry, take your time, take as much time as possible, because cleaning up is the most time consuming job, but when a photo is well cleaned up, it's going to be perfect once it's done editing. Cleanup is what makes a photo look nice, not even photo retouching or anything else. Cleaning up the photo will absolutely make everything easier. So as you can see, the small freckles and dust particles have all been cleaned up. So we move on to the bigger pieces. So before we go to that, first things first, I'm gonna go to my quick selection, and when I pick my quick selection, what I want to do here, I want to select my subject so that I can separate my subject from the backdrop, so that it can be easier for me to work on the backdrop without affecting my subject. So first things first, because Photoshop 2023 has the new AI system, I'm going to select the subject.
One eternity later.
It's taking a little bit quite of some time, but there, as you can see, it has selected the subject well, but it has missed out a few spots here and there. So I'm gonna adjust that accordingly. So I'm gonna take the polygonal lasso tool and put it on add. The reason as to I'm putting it on add is to add the pieces that were left out during the whole selection. The Photoshop AI has really done a nice job for figuring out the subject and adjusting it accordingly, and also doing a good selection. So as for this part, I'm going to subtract so that I can be able to separate my backdrop from the hair, from the model's hair. Right, so I'm trying to pick up the bigger boxes. and I think we are done. So here is one key thing that stands out for me. I like saving my selection just because I know I'm gonna need it later on when I'm editing other parts of the image. So I'm gonna name this selection subject. Right, once I'm done with that, I press Command J to mask it out. Done. So I'm gonna go back to my cleanup, right click, load my selection, and go to subject. Now here I'm gonna select the inverse, make sure the feathering is around 5. Yep, and Control J. So now, as you can see, I have my subject and I have my background. So we are now gonna work on these other objects, the ones that are distracting in the photo. So we're going to use the content aware tool. So still using the polygonal lasso tool, I'm going to select this, oh sorry about that, let me put it on add. There, now I'm gonna content aware and fill up. Done. So as you can see, it has done a really nice job. Apart from this, I selected it in a bad way, so I'm going to fill it up. And it's done. So we come now to this. So for this, make sure you select near the endings of your backdrop.
One eternity later.
So as you can see, it has really done a nice job. It has cleaned up the backdrop so well. So here I'm going to select this part, and I'm trying to avoid this shiny reflection of my strobe. Clean that too. Done. Now we have a clean backdrop. As you can see, a very nice clean backdrop. And we are now going to go to step number 3. So step number 3, we're going to start off by selecting our shadow. So here, this step we're going to select the model shadow. And we are going to rename it and write it shadow. So the reason we have selected the shadow is because most of the time, most people usually edit and clean up the background and forget about the shadow and make their photos look purely unrealistic. So by selecting your subject and separating it from the backdrop, you're now going to be having a shadow on a separate side, your subject on a separate side, and also your backdrop on a separate side. So I'm gonna mask it up by pressing Ctrl J, and there. So once done, I go back to I switch off the shadow layer. First, let me name it shadow. I switch off the shadow layer. I go back to my backdrop layer and go to blur, Gaussian blur, and zoom up the blur to something quite reasonable, so that I can't be able to see any distractions, and the backdrop should be as clean as possible. So as you can see, there was still some fragments here and there, yeah, and we have a little bit of the shadow here and here. That looks quite nice. Let me reduce it a little bit, about 130. Yeah, 130 looks good. Alright, and done. As you can see, well cleaned out. But now our model looks as if she's floating on the backdrop. There's no realism, there's no realistic touch to the photo. So what we are gonna do here, we are now going to go to the next step. We are now going to add a shadow from this drop shadow. We are now going to add the shadow and make it more realistic. So first things first, I'm gonna go and take a drop shadow, and using this preview panel, I'm now gonna just adjust the angle according to my light source from where the light was coming from in my photo. So as you can see here, the light was coming from this direction, so my shadow was mostly falling on this side of the backdrop. So I can adjust it to somewhere about, yeah, that's nice. And I adjusted this to this. The distance from where the shadow is from the subject to where it is on the backdrop, that looks fairly well. And the spread, whenever the spread is on a lower case number, it's usually soft, and when the number raises, it becomes harder. So I like maintaining my spread on a lowercase number. Something like 13 looks nice. And as for the size, this one, the lower the number, the harder. The higher the number, the softer the shadow is. So 49 looks good to me, as you can see. Yeah, and now with that, I'm gonna click to my drop shadow and create a layer. Now I'm gonna get the shadow layer, and with the shadow layer, I'm gonna be able to hide this layer and remain with my shadow. So with this shadow, I'm gonna now go to and convert it into a smart object. Once converted into a smart object, I'm gonna go to blur, Gaussian blur, and give it the same blur that we had initially to the backdrop. As you can see, done, nice. So here we can change the blending mode according to what fits here on description. I think I'm gonna soft light looks good. Soft light looks good. So I'm gonna mask it. The reason as to I'm masking it, I want to clean up some parts where I think, according to me, it looks a little bit, the shadow has gone to where it's unwanted. So I'm gonna take my eraser tool, reduce the size according to what you prefer, and sorry about that. What's going on? And now and you're back. So I'm gonna erase a few parts from this side, make sure the hardness is on 0. I'm gonna erase just a few parts on this side. Sorry about that. Let me make it a little bit calmer. Yeah, that looks nice. So the before and after, the before and after. Now with that, I'm gonna reduce the opacity to around 40-45, depending on your own preference. Before after. Yeah, as you can see, before after. Now we go to the last step. So with this shadow that we hid, we can now delete it. We no longer need it. So let's now see the before and after. So the before and after, before and after. So for the last step, we need to add something to the backdrop, and this something is what we call noise. The reason as to why we are adding noise, as you can see, the backdrop is a little bit too soft. What am I saying is it's too soft. Whenever you separate your subject from the backdrop and then add Gaussian blur to it, the backdrop usually becomes softer, but we needed to make it a little bit realistic. Yes, the shadow has made it realistic, but we need to adjust the backdrop too and make it a little bit more realistic. So we're gonna add noise. So you add noise the smallest amount. My own preference is 2, and I usually make it monochromatic. Reason is because noise, most of the time noise comes with colors. So when I'm adding noise, I try and reduce and make it monochromatic so that it can become black and white, and reduce its amount as minimal as possible. So I usually like maintaining mine at 2, and once I'm done with that, I'm gonna now go to my solid color. But before that, you come here, I pick the closest color to the model's face. Why am I picking the color closest to the model's face? Reason being, when the subject's face is well lit, the area around her, the diameter around her head usually gets the perfect bounce or light coverage. So I'm gonna select this part so that I can be able to get the perfect bounce of light, and press OK. So come and take my solid color, fill it up and press OK. So here I come and reduce its opacity to around 29, 30, 35. Yeah. Alright, I can reduce it a little bit lower so that I can make it look a little bit more realistic. How about 20, 25, 26? Yeah, looks good. Before, after, before, after. Now I can come back to my drop shadow, increase its amount to about 60, and let me adjust it a little bit there, 70. Yeah, now looks much more realistic. So here's the before and after for the shadow. I'm gonna remove this and add it. So the photo looks now much more better. So here's the before, here's the after, before, after once again. I still feel the need to reduce this one a little bit. How about 20? Yeah, 20 now looks much more better. So the before, after. I can reduce the amount of the shadow so that it doesn't spread too much on the backdrop. Yeah, now it looks like a shadow. Before, after, before, after. So there you have it, guys. Now I'm gonna merge all these layers into one. I press Alt, Control A, and merge it into one. Come back to my and select selective color. So I work on the blues, adjust accordingly depending on what suits my preference. Yeah, looks kinda nice. There, a little bit of this. Science, not much of a difference. There, that looks perfect. Before, after, that looks amazing. Now one more thing to add. One more thing to add. Now go back to I'm gonna reduce the amount a little bit if I feel it's just too much. Yeah, there you have it, guys. So that's how I clean up my backdrop. Now that's how you clean up the backdrop. Now from this to this to this. If you liked the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share with friends. and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one. Peace.